To all the participants, welcome to this webinar on the usage of processing steps in packaging. My name is Lieven Pletting. At ESCO, I'm Director Partner Integrations, and I also happen to be the co-chair of the packaging subcommittee in the Ghent Workgroup.
Okay, a warm welcome from my side as well. I'm Frank Woltring. I'm a product manager at ESCO. I'm taking care of what we call the packaging PDF editor framework. Happy to be here. Happy to support Lieven on this interesting seminar on processing steps.
Okay, first a bit of explanation. Don't worry. I will make this short and sweet. Let's start by kicking in an open door. Packaging is more than printing. It has a structure, and there's all kinds of production steps besides the actual printing that have to happen. There's cutting, creasing. There is all kinds of finishing operations like varnish, embossing, and foils. So what are we trying to solve with processing steps? Well, what the ultimate goal of this is to create a single version of the truth. And what do I mean by that? That is to use PDF as the production master for both the printing and the other production steps in the production of packaging. In this sense, the PDF will act as the point of aggregation of both print content and structure and data for finishing production steps. All that information gets aggregated into the PDF. That's what gets the final approved for print, which we actually have to call approved for production here. And once that container of all the information gets to production, there it's the data for both the printing presses or the finishing equipment or other steps in the production are extracted from that PDF. Now, if you have been around in the industry, you will tell me, Lieven, this is not something new. We have been doing this for decades. And you're exactly right. I mean, that's old stuff. But what is or what was, I have to say, the mode of the way this was done before processing steps? Well, there was no standardization. There were just conventions where colorant names or layer names were used as an indication of the intention of the contours or other objects in the PDF. There was no fixed and agreed upon vocabulary, which also means that it's language dependent. So it was far from obvious if you were sending a PDF from one part of the world to another company on another part of the world, that the receiving part would understand what the sending part was actually meaning. So that only with agreements between sender and receiver, this could be figured out. So there is no guaranteed out-of-the-box interoperability. It's error-prone. It's difficult to automate. Maybe it was possible to automate with a lot of configuration, but if the source of the PDF was known by the receiver, but if there was another second source of PDFs that had to be received by the receiver, then it was again other configuration steps, because the chances that both receivers did exactly the same are rather slim. So what does processing steps bring? Well, it's a standardized way to tag objects in the PDF with the intention of the production step they are meant for. We are using PDF optional content groups, which is a very difficult name for just layers. And those layers, the names of the layers can be just whatever the user wants them to be and whatever language he wants them to be. The secret is in the metadata dictionaries that are attached to these PDF optional content groups, where a fixed vocabulary, a standardized vocabulary is used that is language independent. And that means that without any agreement or predefined setup between sender and the receiver will understand what the sender is sending. So there is guaranteed interoperability without misinterpretations. And this is an enabler for automation. It's simple. There is no automation without standardization. Where does this come from? It's an ISO spec. That ISO spec was developed in the Ghent work group. It was submitted to ISO in October 2013 to give it higher visibility. It got published in July 2018. And as a member of the Ghent work group, I'm proud to say that this is one of the better standards. There is wide adoption in a wide range of applications by different vendors, Adobe and Focus, Scala software, ESCO, hybrid software, just to name a couple. I will skip this or just fly over it, just to give you an indication of the main use cases that are covered by processing steps: structural data, dimension lines, braille, legend, intended positions, white and varnish. And there's actually a second version in the works that will extend this list further. And enough talking. Frank, I'm very keen to see your demo.
Okay, let's have a look here how the processing steps can be introduced in a design step. Yes, of course, most important application here is Illustrator. We got an easy design. We got a layer with a design and something that's called profile. So the maker of this file intended to put some processing step information in here, but it has been put in the process black separation. It's knocking out the background. And this is exactly what we try to prevent with the introduction of processing steps. So how do I get them into my Illustrator here? That's pretty easy. We are offering a free plugin to Adobe Illustrator. So on our website, on the ESCO website, you can find a free plugin that if you install it to Illustrator, it does all the necessary stuff to allow you to introduce processing steps into your Illustrator documents. Yeah, so it does a couple of things, but does it well as well here is adding a panel to your Illustrator that allows you to create and manage processing steps. So in our case here, our file does not have processing steps. Let's create them. Nothing is easier than that. On the left side here, we see the layers, and on the right side, we can assign the appropriate processing step to it. But as we saw, the content and that layer is not okay. And we see the violations here. So just by clicking on a violation, I can select the object and fix the issue. So for example, I don't want you to use the black process ink. I want you to use the cut, which is a spot color. And I need you to have overprint enabled. So again, just select by clicking on the violation and fix that issue. So right now I have an Illustrator file that is fully compliant with the ISO standard of the processing steps defined by the Ghent workgroup. So this was how I create processing step content. Let's now try to see how we get existing processing step content into our file. Let's do this by placing an Adios cut structural design file. This file is fully packed with structural information. Yeah, it has artwork panels, the cut, the crease, bleed information, varnish free areas. It even has the folding angles defined of that folding carton that allows us to see a 3D here. But we are interested now more in how is the structural design translated into the processing steps of my design. Okay, let's get rid of the not so smart profile from the beginning. And we see here that the processing steps have been created when loading this ARD file. So all the different line types have not only been translated to graphical objects, to see, to print and proof. No, we also put them here in ISO standard processing steps. Okay, so I've introduced a structural design processing step information now here. So now let's start using it. Because it has been given purposes when making it processing steps, we can take that information now and use it for our creative work or for our prepress work. So for example, I want to use the bleed information of my processing steps to apply it to my design and make sure that there's no artwork outside the bleed and have a very nicely trimmed file. For that, I take that information with the purpose of bleed, put it in my design, and with a couple of clicks here, I can trim my entire artwork, and all around here on my artwork, we see that we have a nicely trimmed job. So this is creating a bleed or using it in our artwork. But secondly, we can use, for example, the varnish information that is included in our processing steps. And with a couple of clicks, create the varnish layer for my artwork. And of course, directly put into the varnish processing step layer without creating any violation. So that was structural design I'm using to populate into my processing steps. Now let's see and add some embellishment, for example. Let's take our dancing fish logos and add them to our embossing. And with a single click, we are creating the correct content in the correct processing step. So always watching that at no stage we introduce any processing step or non-printing information that may harm or damage the printing plates. And that's of course true for information panels as well. So I can equip my design here with a legend with all the information that the different stakeholders need to understand the job. And here we can make usage of the processing step types. So I can provide my customer or my organization with a clearly structured table about what processing step is prepared in what department, for example. Talking about shareholders, of course, our most important shareholder is our customer. So what I want to do here is share this design with my customer, or maybe with a colleague in the QA department who not necessarily are prepress professionals. And we want to see there if we provide them with a browser-based view on the artwork to see if the processing steps can make a difference here as well. And of course, as I said, maybe I am somebody at a brand, I have to approve the design, the print, but I'm not necessarily a prepress expert. So how can the processing steps help me? They can help me a lot because I am presented with a composed file where all the information is inside. So the processing steps now allow me to quickly just configure the view on the file so I can approve the different faces and the different finishes. So for example, I only want to see the embossing. So I enable the embossing, I disable the design. So even as a prepress provider, I don't need to prepare multi-page approval PDFs just for the purpose of explaining the job when it's being printed. It's all in one file. So for me here as a non-professional, I can now just approve the file and ask my provider to continue production. So we're back here in Illustrator. We got the approval for the file. So now we need to share it to a type of PDF that is including those processing step informations. And this is the second part of this free plugin. It allows you to export to a PDF, including those processing steps as defined by the Gantt workgroup and the ISO specification. Then I can take it into my sheet generation. So probably starting with the a manufacturing file as a template, and we simply load our artwork here into our step and repeat. And that artwork has the processing steps that we've defined at the Illustrator, at the designer's side of the story. And here we can turn on and off each individual processing step of each blank or each station in our file, or because we are in a nested PDF now, we can turn on and off the processing steps on the top level and decide which ones are included in our output. And of course, the processing step story doesn't end here. I may need to add print registration marks that, of course, are becoming, like in our artwork, a legend layer, so they do not interfere with any of the artwork. And that was the little demo until sheet making. Happily returning back to you, Lieven, showing us how the journey continues.
So in this case, we received the step and repeat PDF from Frank. What we now can do on the workflow side is use that step and repeat PDF in production to drive different processes. So I have the PDF right there. I can look at a simplified version of a workflow right there. What does this workflow do? First, with using a focused pit stop, we will verify if that step and repeat PDF is playing by the rules. Of course, in this case, I know it comes from Frank. It has been prepared with processing steps, so it will be okay. But any other step and repeat PDF that might contain an error would be taken out and flagged as an error for correction. Once the PDF, and so let's just launch this. Once we have approved the PDF, it's okay. We can send it to the RIP to create the printing separations. And as you can see over here, also we are excluding content from the step and repeat PDF based on processing steps and not on a whole series of variations of ink names or layer names whatsoever. So the whole idea is that we can just select objects in the PDF based on the standard and no matter from which source this PDF comes. In the second branch, we are extracting the varnish data for the varnish plate. Basically, in exactly the same way, we select the content from the varnish layer, which will then, if we open the viewer, show nicely that we have the varnish data and nothing else. So this could be used for blanket making. And while the RIP is churning away on creating the data, we see that also there it's purely selection on varnish. So, and you see, okay, we have all the varnish, all the printing separations over there. If I open my viewer, you can see it's the printing data, but it's the screened version of the printing data. If I just switch off, and you can actually see there that we have screen dots over there. So that could be used by quality management. So that pretty much ends the demo. Time for maybe a couple of last words before we wrap it up for questions. So where can I find information about processing steps? Your first go-to point is the Ghent Workgroup website. You can find a page dedicated to processing steps over there. And also interesting, there are sample files over there which allow you to actually see PDFs with processing steps. Of course, there is the ISO website, maybe for vendors. If you consider an implementation, definitely worthwhile to you to go to the ISO website and purchase the standard, because that's the single source of the truth. And if you want just to experiment with processing steps, nothing better than just doing it yourself. And you can use the free Adobe Illustrator plugin for that. And with that, I think this concludes this session, and we are open for questions. So the question is if this applies to sign and display. I would say, of course it does.
Yeah.
The Cantwell group, the specification was developed in the packaging and labels subcommittee, but I think from day one there were remarks in the direction that processing steps is not is also applicable for other areas of the printing industry, and sign and display was one of the ones mentioned was one of the first mentioned in that context. So yes, also for sign and display.
Yeah, also reflected by the broad coverage of those different processing type steps and types of those steps, sorry, and the groups. So most of the finishing and conversion machinery is kept in that vocabulary, yeah, and the different types. So I would say it's very broad from the spectrum of applications.
Yeah, some groups or types might be missing for sign and display, like grommets and these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But the standard is extensible in the sense that there is a defined mechanism to use custom processing steps, but that of course goes at the expense of interoperability. So the idea is that as we progress and the usage of processing steps grows in the packaging and labels industry, but maybe also outside of the packaging and labels industry, more and more groups and types are being added. That's being done, the prep work for that is being done in the Cantwell group, and as soon as we have like a good solid proposal, we from the Cantwell group, we also submit this to ISO to include it in a dated revision. So there is a question: are there standard colors and names of colors for varnish, cutter, and so on and so on? No, actually, the idea is not to rely on standard names of colors and names of colors, because it's the metadata attached to the optional content group layer that identifies the data. It's not the ink name or the colorant name in the PDF. There are certain rules in the standard about usage of colors in those processing steps. For instance, you cannot use a colorant name of a printing colorant in a processing step, and so on. There are more. So there are limitations put around the usage of colors in processing steps, but the names are actually free.
Yeah. But I understand Remco's question, because in the past there were conventions, we called them, about technical inks. Huh? I mean, some vendors had technical inks versus printing inks, and this now has changed to technical layers, if you respectlessly could call them. Yeah. So now it's a layer story and not an ink story any longer.
Yeah, or you could put it another way. A colorant that is used in a processing step could be seen as a technical ink.
Yeah,
for the people that knew that concept.
Yeah, from us, I would like to give a little comment. I've participated a webinar from Adobe not that long ago about Adobe in the packaging space. So in that audience, there were many designers, packaging designers, creative people. And 3 of the 4 questions that were asked were related to how can I provide a file that is acceptable for the prepress people. And with every time this question came up, of course, processing steps, injecting processing steps in the packaging artwork is a big help for both sides, for the creators to create content that is flawless, but also for the prepress people, of course, because they don't have to spend hours in cleaning up files and strip the structural content from the artwork. What other vendors have plugins for this? I've seen two today, one on our website and one of our previous demonstration that was a different plugin.
And there are also pre-flight tools. So both
Yes.
tools from Callas and Focus can also take PDFs with that are well structured and then add the metadata to the layers.
Yeah.
So that's another way how you can generate PDFs with processing steps. So you have the Illustrator plugins, you have the specialized prepress applications from both our colleagues and ourselves. You have the pre-flight tools.
Okay, that were at least a couple of questions. So there is interactivity. At least we created some interest.
All right. If there are no more questions, I want to thank you for your attention. I hope you found it useful. And with this, I think we can close the meeting.
Yep. Thanks a lot from my side as well. If you have any questions for the shown products, of course, this is a non-commercial and it should stay non-commercial event. But feel free to drop us emails and we'll answer any question you may have. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.